Overthinking is not a sign that you're smart. It's a sign that something in your mind no longer trusts you. Your brain is replaying fears, predicting pain, and running simulations of every worst-case scenario, not to protect you, but to control you. And if you don't break this habit now, it slowly becomes the architect of your anxiety, your self-doubt, and your decisions. Let's pull apart the psychology behind it and take your mind back. Overthinking is rarely the problem you think it is. Most people believe it comes from being too smart, too aware, or too cautious. But the real truth sits deeper, in the places of your mind you don't usually look at. Overthinking begins as a protective reflex. Your brain notices something uncertain, something unfamiliar, something emotionally risky, and instead of letting you move forward, it pulls you back into your head. It convinces you that thinking more will somehow create a safer path. But that's the trick. The more you think, the worse you feel, and the worse you feel, the more your mind believes it needs to overthink to keep you safe. It's like your brain is still living in an older version of your life, responding to threats that don't exist anymore. Maybe you grew up in a home where mistakes weren't allowed. Maybe you were judged for being wrong. Maybe people made you feel like one wrong move could ruin everything. So your mind learned a rule. Before you act, analyze everything. And at first, it helped you survive emotionally. But now, as an adult, that old survival rule is hurting you more than it's helping. The hidden psychology behind overthinking is built on fear, not obvious fear, but quiet fear. Fear of being judged, fear of choosing wrong, fear of disappointing someone, fear of losing control, fear of repeating an old pain you still carry. These fears don't show up as loud alarms. They show up as questions. What if I'm wrong? What if this goes badly? What if I make a mistake I can't undo? And those questions feel responsible, logical, mature, but they pull you into a mental loop you can't escape. Overthinking is your mind trying to predict every possible outcome so it can avoid being hurt. But psychology teaches something very important. The brain is terrible at predicting the future. When your emotions are involved, the brain tends to overestimate danger and underestimate your ability to handle it. That's why your thoughts feel heavy, layered, complicated. Your brain isn't looking for truth, it's looking for safety. Even if that safety traps you in anxiety, there's also a subtle form of self-doubt running under the surface. When you don't fully trust yourself, your decisions, your intuition, your ability to adapt, your mind tries to fill that gap with more thinking. It's like hiring a bodyguard because you believe you can't defend yourself. Overthinking becomes the mental bodyguard you never asked for. And just like an overprotective guard, it stands in your way, blocking opportunities, stopping you from acting, and keeping your life smaller than it needs to be. Most people blame themselves for overthinking, saying things like, "Why am I like this? Why can't I just stop?" But you have to understand, your brain believes it's protecting you. It's not trying to ruin your life. It's trying to prevent a repeat of the moments when you felt helpless, ashamed, or hurt. But the brain doesn't know that you're stronger now. It still uses old memories to decide how you should live today. What once protected you is now limiting you. The hidden psychology of overthinking also includes something called mental perfectionism. This is when your brain expects perfect clarity before you make any move. It wants a guarantee, certainty, zero risk. But life doesn't work like that. And because the brain can never reach perfect certainty, you stay stuck in endless loops. You wait for a green light that never comes. Slowly, overthinking shapes your self-image. You start believing you're indecisive, anxious, slow, or overly emotional. You start questioning your intelligence, your courage, your goals. But none of those things are true. What's really happening is that your brain has misunderstood its job. It thinks its job is to protect you from discomfort. But real life requires discomfort. Growth requires it. Decisions require it. Movement requires it. Understanding this is the first step to breaking the habit. Overthinking didn't come from weakness, that it came from a wound, that it came from fear, it came from a younger version of you who needed protection. Now the question becomes, how do you unlearn it? There's a darker side to overthinking that most people never notice, and this is where the real trap lies. Your mind doesn't just create thoughts, it creates patterns. And once a pattern becomes familiar, the brain starts treating it like a comfort zone, even when it hurts you. Overthinking becomes the mental place you return to whenever you feel unsure, overwhelmed, or emotionally exposed. Not because it helps you, but because your brain has decided it's safer to stay in the loop than to take action. The truth is, overthinking isn't just a habit. It's a form of mental self-protection that slowly turns into self-sabotage. You don't realize it at first. It begins with a simple worry, a simple what if, a simple doubt. But your brain makes a deal with you in the background. Think a little more, and I'll keep you safe. And you believe it, because thinking feels productive. Thinking feels responsible. But in reality, thinking becomes a cage disguised as comfort. This is where dark psychology comes in. Not because someone else is manipulating you, but because your own brain is using the same strategies that emotional manipulators use: fear conditioning, uncertainty amplification, and reward loops. The mind rewards you with a tiny sense of relief every time you overthink. That small relief becomes the hook that keeps you returning to the same mental cycle. It's the same mental mechanism that keeps people stuck in toxic relationships or addictive behaviors. Stress becomes familiar, and the familiar becomes comfortable. Your brain begins to whisper dangerous messages. Don't act until you're sure. Don't decide until you analyze everything. Don't speak until the outcome is predictable. These thoughts sound wise, but they're actually rooted in fear. They make you dependent on the loop. You start believing that thinking more is the responsible thing to do, when in reality, it's stealing your clarity, your time, and your peace. Every time you start overthinking, your brain produces emotional images: failure, embarrassment, judgment, loss, rejection. And the brain reacts to imagined danger the same way it reacts to real danger. It spikes your stress, your heart rate, your uncertainty. You're not just thinking, you're reliving emotional threats that don't even exist. This becomes a self-reinforcing cycle. The fear triggers thoughts, the thoughts trigger more fear, and the fear convinces you to keep thinking it. There's also a form of internal manipulation happening. A part of your mind becomes the critic, the judge, the worrier, and it uses guilt, fear, and worst-case scenarios to keep you obedient. You start asking yourself, what if I fail? What if I look stupid? What if I regret this? But these questions don't lead to answers. They lead to paralysis. They keep you from living, risking, growing, and learning. The most painful part is that you don't notice how much power you're giving away. The mind becomes a storyteller, and the stories it tells are filled with doubt and danger. But because these stories come from inside you, you believe them. You trust them. You treat them like truth. Meanwhile, the real truth stays hidden. Your mind isn't trying to give you clarity. It's trying to protect itself from discomfort. Action requires uncertainty. Growth requires risk. Confidence requires movement. But the mind prefers safety, even if that safety costs you your potential. That's why overthinking feels like you're stuck in glue. You want to move, but the fear pulls you back. You want to decide, but the doubt clouds everything. You want to act, but the mind tells you to wait, think, plan, analyze, delay, all while life moves forward without you. And the more you delay, the more your brain learns that delaying is the safe choice. This is how a habit becomes a trap. One day you don't even know if you're overthinking or simply avoiding life. The line becomes blurry. Overthinking becomes your default reaction to everything: love, work, friendships, decisions, opportunities. And the longer you stay in your head, the more disconnected you feel from your instincts, your confidence, your independence. You start losing trust in yourself, and that's the real danger. A person who doesn't trust their own mind becomes easy to exhaust, easy to confuse, easy to manipulate, and easy to control, even by their own thoughts. But the moment you understand that your mind is not giving you truth, only protection, something inside you shifts. You begin to see the pattern for what it is, a mental safety ritual that has gone too far. And once you see the trap clearly, you can start walking out of it. Breaking the habit of overthinking doesn't happen by force. You can't tell your mind to stop thinking and expect it to listen. The brain doesn't respond to orders, it responds to patterns. And the only way to break an old pattern is to interrupt it and replace it with something healthier, something that gives you back your sense of control. When you understand this, you stop fighting your thoughts and start retraining your mind. The first step is learning to interrupt the spiral early. Overthinking always begins with a small spark, a thought, a doubt, a fear. But if you catch it early, you prevent it from turning into a storm. This is where awareness becomes your tool. When you feel your mind starting to loop, don't judge yourself. Just name what's happening. Say something simple like, I'm starting to spiral, or my brain is slipping into fear thinking. This might seem too simple, but labeling your thoughts weakens their emotional power. Psychology calls this cognitive diffusion, separating yourself from the thought instead of diving into it. You step out of the stream instead of letting it drag you. Once you interrupt the pattern, the next step is to question the thought with something grounding and disarming. Ask yourself, is this helpful, or am I just scaring myself? This question pulls the emotional charge away from the thought and forces your brain to step back. Most of the time, you'll instantly realize the thought isn't helpful. It's just fear trying to sound logical. This question becomes a mental flashlight. It exposes the illusion your brain is creating. Overthinking thrives in darkness, but it collapses when you shine clarity on it. Another powerful way to break the loop is to bring your mind back into your body. Overthinking is a head problem, but control is a body solution. When you're stuck in thoughts, your body becomes tense without you realizing it. Your breathing becomes shallow, your shoulders tighten, your jaw locks. When you shift focus to your physical sensations, you interrupt the mental loop and activate the part of your nervous system responsible for calmness. You can take a slow inhale and then double-length exhale. You can place your hand on something cold. You can feel your feet on the ground. These small actions send a louder message to your brain than any thought ever could. I am safe right now. And when the brain feels safe, overthinking loses its fuel point. One of the most effective strategies is building micro-decisions. Overthinking grows in the absence of trust. Your brain overanalyzes because it doesn't believe you're capable of handling mistakes. So you have to show it that you can. Start giving yourself small decision deadlines. 2 minutes for simple choices, 5 minutes for medium ones. It trains your brain to act. Every small decision becomes a signal. I can decide. I can move. I can handle the outcome. With each small success, the self-trust you lost over the years slowly rebuilds. The more you act, the less your brain tries to control everything through overthinking. Another key piece of breaking the habit is accepting that uncertainty doesn't mean danger. Overthinking tries to remove all uncertainty from life, but that's impossible. You have to teach your mind a new message. Uncertainty is normal. Uncertainty is part of life. When you stop demanding perfect clarity, you free yourself from mental paralysis. Most decisions don't need perfect certainty, they just need movement. People who overthink often wait for the right feeling, but that feeling only comes after you take action, never before. You gain clarity through action, not thought. When your brain tries to pull you back into fear, remind yourself of something simple and powerful. I don't need to figure everything out right now. This creates mental space. It gives you permission to breathe. Overthinking thrives on urgency, the feeling that you must think now, decide now, solve everything now. When you remove that urgency, your thoughts soften. You regain control. The final part of breaking the loop is practicing self-kindness. Overthinking is rooted in self-protection, but also in self-criticism. You overthink because you're afraid of making a wrong move, which often means you've punished yourself in the past for not being perfect. When you start treating yourself with understanding instead of pressure, your mind relaxes. You begin to realize that a mistake won't destroy you, that failure won't define you, that judgment won't end you. And when those fears soften, overthinking naturally loses its strength. Breaking the habit is not about having a silent mind. It's about creating a mind that trusts you enough to let you live. Overthinking doesn't just fade away on its own. It disappears the moment your mind starts trusting you again. The hardest part isn't stopping the thoughts. It's proving to yourself that you can handle life without needing your brain to constantly protect you. Every time you act without perfect certainty, every time you make a choice and live with the outcome, your mind begins to learn something radical. You are capable. You are strong. You can survive discomfort. And the moment your brain accepts that, overthinking loses its power. Becoming someone your mind trusts starts with small, deliberate steps. You can't rebuild trust in a day, but you can start immediately. Begin with micro risks. Say yes to small challenges that make you slightly uncomfortable. Make a choice you might have overanalyzed before, and see that the world doesn't collapse. Slowly, the mental narrative changes. Instead of thinking, I can't handle this, your brain starts to recognize evidence of your competence. Each small act of courage becomes a deposit in your internal bank of self-trust, and overthinking starts to feel unnecessary because your mind no longer believes it must guard you constantly. Another key part of reclaiming your mind is learning to sit with uncertainty. Overthinking is born from the fear of the unknown, the need to control outcomes that can't be controlled. The human brain wants to predict the future, but life refuses to be predicted. When you embrace uncertainty, you tell your mind, I am willing to experience life as it comes, and I can survive the results. This doesn't mean recklessness, it means awareness. It means understanding that fear is natural, discomfort is normal, and your worth isn't tied to being perfect. The brain hates uncertainty because it's uncomfortable, but the moment you accept discomfort as part of existence, overthinking loses its grip. The third element is reclaiming your emotional authority. Overthinking often comes from listening too much to fear and not enough to intuition. Fear speaks in loops and what-ifs, but intuition speaks in clarity and quiet nudges. Over time, overthinking silences the intuitive voice. To break free, you have to learn to listen again. When a decision arises, pause, breathe, and notice the subtle guidance of your instincts. Trust your gut. Even if the choice isn't perfect, the act of trusting yourself retrains your brain to respect your judgment. Over time, your mind learns that it doesn't need to control everything because you are fully capable of handling the unknown. Self-compassion is the fourth pillar. Overthinking thrives on punishment and self-criticism. It whispers, you should know better, or you might fail. To break its hold, you have to talk to yourself differently. Treat yourself like a friend, not a prisoner. Say, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to be unsure. I am learning, and that is enough. Self-compassion doesn't make you weak. It makes your mind calm. A calm mind is not a thinking mind trapped in loops. It's a clear mind ready to act. When fear no longer drives the narrative, overthinking collapses because it no longer has the power to manipulate you. Finally, reclaiming your mind is about action, consistency, and repetition. Overthinking is a habit your brain has rehearsed for years. Breaking it requires deliberate practice, repeated daily. Every time you interrupt a spiral, question a fear, trust your gut, or sit with uncertainty, you are literally rewiring your neural pathways. Each repetition strengthens self-trust, weakens fear-driven loops, and restores clarity. The process is slow, but it is inevitable if you commit to it. Your brain will eventually stop overthinking because it realizes its services are no longer needed. You are now fully capable of steering your own mind. The ultimate truth is this: overthinking is not who you are. It is a learned behavior rooted in protection, fear, and mistrust. And the person you are becoming, a person who trusts themselves, embraces uncertainty, and acts despite fear, is the version of you that your brain will eventually learn to support instead of control. That is freedom. That is peace. That is the end of overthinking. Do you ever feel trapped inside your own mind? Constantly thinking, questioning, replaying every conversation, every choice, every what if. You're not lazy, weak, or broken. Overthinking isn't a flaw. It's a habit your brain developed to protect you from fear. But what once kept you safe now keeps you stuck, anxious, and drained. Here's the truth: overthinking only has power because you give it power. And the way to take it back is simple, but not easy. Step 1. Catch the spiral early. The moment your thoughts start looping, pause and say, "This is just fear, not truth." Step 2. Ask yourself the one question that stops overthinking cold. Is this thought helping me, or is it just scaring me? Step 3. Ground yourself in the present. Focus on your breath. Feel your feet on the floor or notice something around you. Your mind can't worry and breathe at the same time. Step 4. Take action, even in small ways. Decisions, movement, small risks. Every time you act, you teach your brain that you can handle life, and the habit of overthinking starts to weaken. Remember, the goal isn't to stop thinking. The goal is to train your mind to trust you again. Overthinking thrives on self-doubt, fear, and perfectionism. Replace doubt with self-trust, fear with curiosity, and hesitation with action. The moment you start, change begins. The moment you interrupt the loops, clarity returns. The moment you trust yourself, peace follows. Overthinking is powerful, but you are more powerful. Your mind isn't your enemy, it's a tool. And when you learn to guide it, to act despite fear, to trust yourself, you finally break freed. So today, take one thought, one choice, one breath, and reclaim your mind.